write people off nowadays because you don't have to talk to anybody and you don't rely on anybody, you know. I mean, I'm speaking like I fucking go and talk to my neighbors, but you know, I try to. I try to talk to my neighbors. I try to like, you know, have a I met my neighbor from across the hall. I mean, where I live, the apartment complex, you don't really have much interaction with people because it's kind of set up like dorm rooms and shit like that, and people are either moving towards work or getting home from work, and you don't want to bother them. But I mean, me and him were in the hallway. We didn't avoid eye contact. We didn't just do the like general nod at somebody and just walk by. But no, you know, he introduced himself and shook my hand, and I was, you know, we introduced each other, but that was about it. And you know, it was nice meeting him. I forgot his fucking name already, which I feel like a dickhead, but I forget everybody's name. And I think it's kind of fucked up that I forget everybody's name, but only in the fact that it's spiteful because I just assume that they're not going to remember my name, even though my name's kind of easy to remember, but it's not easy to say, so it's easy to forget, I would think. And I don't hold anybody against that. You know, it's Keanu. Unless they are really big fans of Keanu Reeves or of that cat movie put out by um, Jordan Peele or Keegan Mike. Yeah, Jordan Peele and Keegan Michael Key. They're not gonna know who fucking Keanu is or that name. They just, you know, like I totally get why. Uh, you know, sometimes when people come from different countries and shit, they take on an easier name to say and remember it so that they can market themselves. And it's not just Americans who can't do that, because what I've found, like, especially with my name, and it's hilarious to think about, only in the fact that, like, you know, you would expect that. I guess you would wrongly expect that somebody would be able to say my name because it sounds different, right? But that's not the case. When I used to deliver Chinese food for a place, I think it was the China Kitchen in Scarborough, Maine. I used to I used to drive Chinese, you know, like all over the place to go into Portland, go wherever they were getting the orders from. And the guy who was running the place, his name was Max. He owns it. He was, you know, and he would be like, you know, when I first introduced myself, I'm like, my name's Keanu, and shook his hand. He's like, Keanu. He's like, what kind of name is that? And I was like, oh, it's Hawaiian. He's like, are your parents Hawaiian? I was like, no. And he's like, well, why are you? And I'm like, fair point. He's like, why would you have a Hawaiian name? I'm like, oh, they just really like the name of that, what it meant and all that stuff. And he's like, oh, okay, well, is there a different, easier name I can call you? And I was like, I guess you can call me Andy. The entire time I worked for him, that's all he knew me as was Andy. And I didn't hold it against him. I was like, yeah, I get it, you know. English is hard enough to speak slash, you know, understand or know. If it's gonna make it easier for him to understand me as Andy, and I run into it today. I mean, nowadays too, like in the massage place I work with a lot of Thai and Asian people. Um, you know, I think there's like 3 Mongolian people who work with me. There's overwhelming amount of Thai people, and then not overwhelming, like they're fucking overrunning the walls and shit, but like the majority is Thai. There's some Mongolian, there's some Chinese, and I want to say, yeah, I can't remember the other one. Vietnamese, that's what it was. Yeah, okay, so yeah, so we have all those ethnicities and different cultures working, and they also are like, you know, like the other day I was like, well, you could call me Andy if it's too hard to say, and they're like, why didn't you tell us that before? We would have just done that. We've all changed our names so that it's easier for people to remember and or say, especially for Americans to say, you know. And I was like, I just, you know, eh. I just asserted my idea of like, well, I'm gonna introduce myself to the client as this, so why wouldn't I introduce? Like, it's one thing if I'm delivering Chinese food, never have to see these people again. It's another thing if I'm gonna be trying to fix them for the next hour. But you know, it's interesting things like that, and I know there's different, you know, that also plays into factors into different cultures, you know, like what I was talking about before with drugs and how they view certain things. But I mean, people have always tried to control the different substances that people enjoy, whether it be, you know, the DEA controlling drugs or the FCC controlling speech or video games or music or anything else like that. Like, again, I'm parroting a lot of like comedians that I like to listen to, but and stuff like that, George Carlin, Joe Rogan, and Bill Burr, and all that stuff. But they all, and Doug Stanhope, but they all like speak truth to it. It's not like they're, you know, there's something about what they're saying that really makes a lot of sense. You know, George Carlin would always say stuff like, you know, the FCC is the biggest piece of shit in our government, like, bureaucracy right now, and it's all because of a reverend who didn't like what was being said on TV, couldn't figure out that all you had to do was turn the dial to the left. You could have changed the channel, you know, or shut it off. That's the other thing too, is you could just shut it off. But when somebody doesn't like something, they try to control it the best they can. They try to do the same thing with video games and market it as like, oh, this is mature and this is what... You start doing the parents' job, and then the parents are no longer parents. They're roommates with their kids. Their kids become douchebags, and their kids grow up douchebags, and then their kids treat people like shit. And that's how we get half the problems in this country, is from parents not teaching their kids or whatever. It's like, you got all these fucking safety nets that just stop things from happening, you know, like, instead of just like tackling this situation head on. And I get it's embarrassing situations. Like, I don't know how like people deal with like their kids going through high school and puberty and all that shit, and having to explain that. Like, kudos to all those teachers. I guess you have to have like no attachment to them, but like, it's one of those things where too much safety net is not a good thing. Too much safety leads to no experiences, which leads to not being able to see the other sides of shit. Like, I wouldn't leave good tips. You know, I mean, I would leave decent tips because my mom was a waitress. So, you know, if it was a bill and it was $10, I'd always leave like $2 or something like that, which is 20%. Until I started waiting tables. And depending on how much of a pain in the ass, which I'm usually a pain in the ass, you know, I don't like tomatoes or ketchup or anything, and I like to switch up the order a little bit. So if the waitress, so I started accounting for like how much bullshit the waitress has got to, or waiter has to deal with to go back, you know. So if I'm ordering a burger and I'm like, yeah, just no tomato, add barbecue sauce and onions. Oh, and instead of like fries, can I get like a small salad instead of that? You know, just completely change everything up. Then she's got to go, he or she has to go back into the kitchen, throw up that order, and then the cook, I'm guessing, is like, fucking, really? Everything's set up for this burger to come out normal, and they got to fuck it up. Like, till I cooked in a kitchen, and until I waited tables, I didn't realize. So now I tip the waitress on, like, how much, or waiter, how much should I give them? So it's like, you know, if they got to go back there, and, oh, you just jumped up your tip to, like, I don't know, $4 on a $10, so 40%. You know, if they're having a shitty night, I tip them good too. Why? Because they're already feeling like dog shit. They don't want to be at work. They might give you shitty service because of like how they're feeling, and that's not their fault. I mean, it is to an extent, but fucking don't tip them because of shitty service. It's one thing if like they're just completely ignoring you and fucking walking away and just all. But if you can usually figure out who's doing that on purpose and who's accidentally doing that, and you shouldn't fucking hold it. Like, oh, this'll teach them. I just won't give them enough money to pay for gas this week. They'll learn that time. They'll learn that way when they can't make it to work and get fired. You fucking morons. Oh Jesus. But that's just how I feel. So I'll fucking I you know, I like to give a little extra, and if they're having a shitty night, I'll usually give them a little extra too, like more than the extra that I was planning on giving them, just to make them fucking be like, ugh, finally a fucking break. Now it's another thing if like I order a burger and somebody brings me a chicken sandwich, and they're like, yeah, that's what you're having, I'm not giving you anything. Then I'm gonna be like, I guess you're not getting a fucking tip. Like that's the difference. But if you know, like I said, you can usually see that shit. I don't know how I got on the waitresses and waiters and fucking all that stuff, but I don't know. Had a good fucking weekend this weekend. This weekend. I got to play a pretty cool board game. It's called Mansions of Madness, which is like a RPG style interactive type of game where you get to build the board a little bit like House on the Haunted Hill, which starts out, you know, everybody starts with the same type of shit. You have certain characters that have different attributes, but those attributes change depending on what happens, and it just ends up being this big choices game, and like what you're gonna plan to do for your next move and all this other stuff, and it comes out to be really, really fun. And I think I'm gonna start doing a podcast about that, maybe even live stream like a live version of it, and have people interact with the game. You know, maybe have like a situation where people can jump in and then we move for that person. I think that would be kind of cool, because I can't get into the whole like watching kids or grown men or grown women playing video games. Like, it just doesn't fucking do anything for me. Takes me right out of the experience. Plus, it's like, it makes me just want to play the game. Doesn't make me want to like keep watching. It just makes me want to play the game. But I guess that's also the part of my brain where I can't watch like fucking sports on TV, because it just makes me want to play it. Like, you'll never find me like, if I go to a sports bar and shit, I'm never looking up at the TV to look at the stats or the score, see who's playing or what. I might look and see who's playing just to like have a conversation starter or something like that. But even then, that's a shitty conversation starter, because immediately somebody's either for one team or the next, and because I don't give a shit, it ends up going nowhere, because they'll, you know, Browns are playing the Ravens. Cool, which team do you like, so that I can agree with you and avoid having to talk about this and just say, yep, and you know, if he just tried a little bit harder, he might get that touchdown. You know, and then they get a chance to call me on my bullshit, and I don't like that. So I try to avoid that type of shit, and I'll just find something else to talk about. You know, like Super Bowl parties are never about like the actual Super Bowl for me. It's just to watch other people get super worked up about shit. That's usually the funnest fucking time I have. You know, I usually am the contrarian of whoever's playing. So it's like, if I'm with all my friends and family back in Maine, who, not my friends per se, but like my you know, family and shit, my grandma and all that, if the Patriots are playing, I used to just automatically root for a different team. You know, rooting against the fucking the one everybody wants to win, you know. And then like, when we were down here, it was like, oh, Patriots versus the fucking Atlanta Falcons. Let's go Patriots. Actually, you know what? That's wrong. I used to do that for every type of sports. Now it depends on what one's gonna get me a free coffee from Dunkin'. That's who I'll vote. So if fucking, I'll jump on. In Washington, D.C., the Redskins suck, so I root for the Capitals. Don't even watch fucking hockey. I go for Capitals. Why? Because if they win, I get free coffee. Or at least 79-cent coffee. And it's not, you know, not anything special, but it's like, at least it's something. Gives me some reason to do that, which is kind of like buying a vote, but it's whatever. I'm super excited about this week. There's a new South Park coming out on Wednesday, which, if you haven't been keeping up with South Park at all, it's been fucking amazing the way they've been tying in different like current events. And I mean, they always do a good job anyway, and like how they make you think about certain shit. But it's just they've been hitting the nail on the head lately as far as like how things are going with between politically correct culture and